Okay, let's make a start. Welcome everybody. Apologies, we have David, Mead and Julie Wood have apologies. Any declarations of disclosable or pecuniary or other pecuniary interests? No. Confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting of the 17th of March, which I think Jeremy chaired so ably. Any comments on those minutes, corrections or whatever? All happy with that? So we can accept that. No chair's announcements, no public participation. And we move to the housing assistance policy, and Jenny's going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. I'm pleased to present this report seeking Exec Committee's recommendation to Council to adopt the Housing Assistance Policy 2026. I'm going to offer a brief overview to introduce the report, but I am joined by Laura, Kate and Jen at the back in case there are any technical questions for members, and wish to note my thanks for them in producing this brilliant piece of work. So the policy before you sets how we're going to use the Disabled Facilities Grants, DFGs, funded through the Better Care Fund, together with other housing assistance funding to support residents with adaptations in their homes, repairs and improvements that enable them to remain safe and independent in their own homes. And the primary reason for bringing this updated policy now is the introduction of the Worcestershire Home Adaptation Service, which started in April this year. And as members will be aware, this shared service now operates across all 6 Worcestershire District Councils, and it's therefore important that we have a consistent and up-to-date policy framework to work across the county collaboratively. The revised policy brings together a more streamlined approach, improves consistency for residents and partner organisations, and updates language where required. And members will recall, included in this report, we recently considered an exceptional disabled facilities grant case here at Executive Committee, where the costs exceeded the normal discretionary limits. And this revised policy, you will see now, provides greater clarity around how exceptional cases can be considered by senior officers, where there is the most reasonable and practical way to meet the strategic housing objectives and support those residents' needs. There are no additional financial implications arising from the adoption of the policy, and updating it will help ensure we continue to meet our statutory responsibilities whilst providing an efficient and effective service for our residents, and also supports our wider priorities around health, wellbeing, independent living, and helping residents remain in sustainable accommodation for longer, and hopefully reducing the need for more intensive interventions. So therefore, I recommend the report and ask Exec Committee to recommend to move forward to full council next week for adoption. Thank you.
Anybody want to comment, make observations on that? Natalie?
Make a habit of going first, I think, don't I? But yeah, thanks for bringing this policy through to the meeting. I do know that a lot of officer resource has gone into it over a long period of time. And I also know that national policy and funding levels haven't kept pace with the needs of our residents. So taking control at a local level where we can is absolutely the right thing to do, particularly as we lurch towards unitarisation, if that's even a word. I might have made it up. I particularly welcome the improved offer for veterans and their families. I actually used to work with someone who didn't manage to secure funding for home adaptations before her husband died from cancer. He was in a hospice. He couldn't come home to die, which is what he wanted to do because they couldn't get him through the front door. So you can imagine how distressing that was emotionally and financially for a family. So I do have a few questions too. So I think that there were some problems initially contacting the new service provider. So can I be assured that these problems have now been resolved and that our signposting information has also been updated? The web page was slightly out of date on our pages. And secondly, does this policy, or if it does, how does it influence the practices of registered providers? Because in my recent experience, they've become less person-centred and are relying on some quite vulnerable elderly residents to make good the works that they have, I'm not going to say botched up, but that they've gone in and done and left in a bit of a mess afterwards. For example, plastering ceilings and painting ceilings and things like that. So I don't know if this actually is aligned with any policies to do with RPs. Then historically, the shortage of OTs in the county, I'm sure everyone's aware of that. And given that a referral from an OT or a trusted assessor is one of the requirements of the qualifying criteria, is there now capacity in the service? And how will the OTs and TAs work together in practice? And related to that, are there any other workforce capacity issues that could jeopardise the efficiency of the service or the initiative? I think that'll do for now. I'll see what answers come back as a result of those. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Just to convey my thanks to Councillor McVeigh for positive feedback, and I think she highlights an important issue around veterans and making sure we get that right. I'm going to refer to officers to answer what are more technical questions, if that's the case, just to make sure we get the most up-to-date information.
Yeah, so on the first question around contacting the new shared service, the details have been updated, and we've not had any reports from any customers, residents that are having difficulty accessing the service. So I believe that's been resolved. I'm going to pick up on the third question around shortage of OTs, and Kate will pick up on the issue around RPs, if that's okay. So we do work in partnership with OTs, and we do monitor waiting lists and the waiting time that it is taking for referrals to get through. We've also got a task and finish group set up as part of the new service that is looking at how we can work better with OTs and streamline the process, because what we need is their clinical knowledge, and then we need our technical officers and caseworkers to go in and focus on the person that needs the adaptations and where they're living, and design what they need. So there is work going. We would do work closely with OTs, and the service does currently have a OT within the service, within the home adaptation service. And yeah, so I think that I'm assured that we're working in partnership with OTs and trying to resolve any issues where it's in our control to do so.
In terms of RP,
Apologies.
in terms of the new service, they are working with registered provider partners. If there are issues in terms of the quality of work that's been carried out by contractors or snagging issues, those can be reported directly to the HAS service. If you're having any difficulty in terms of that, I'm happy for those to be reported to the private sector housing team, and we can see what we can do to work with both the RP and HAS to come to a suitable resolution.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for those responses. I'm still not clear on the role of the trusted assessor and how that kind of dovetails into the work of the OTs and how the caseloads might be managed. And how long is the waiting list at the moment, do you know, for your DFGs, just on average? Thanks.
In terms of the trusted assessor, there are cases where it might be more straightforward adaptations where a qualified trusted assessor can carry out that assessment of needs rather than using an OT who can be involved in more complex adaptations.
So are they healthcare professionals? I just don't know what their skill set is. I'm sorry if I'm asking the same question a lot.
Trusted assessors, they can be healthcare professionals. They can also be other officers. So one of our officers within our private sector housing team is a qualified assessor. So it's a qualification requirement rather than necessarily needing to be a medical professional.
Thanks. And then the last one about average waiting times at the moment for DFGs, do we know?
Apologies, I think we're going to need to come back. I haven't looked at them since the end of last quarter, but yeah, we will come back to you on that with the correct data.
Okay, you happy with that? Natalie, thanks. Any other questions, comments? We have Jeremy.
I'm happy to second it.
Second it, yeah, I've just come to that. You caught me out there. Right, we have proposer and seconder. Shall we go to the vote?
So all those in favour, please raise your cards now, please. That's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item, that is Community Infrastructure Investment Plan 25 to 28.
This one, John.
Have I missed one? Oh, Housing Enforcement Policy, right.
Yes, staying
It's Jenny anyway.
indeed, staying with me
Jenny,
again.
any thoughts?
Been very busy and productive in housing again in the last few weeks. So this is a second report this evening on a similar vein of housing. Again, to seek for exec's recommendation to go on to full council next week. And the primary reason for bringing this policy forward is the introduction of the Renters' Right Act 2025, which, as you know, represents the most significant reform of the private rented sector that we have seen in many years. And the Act introduces a range of new duties and enforcement powers for councils, including responsibilities relating to landlord compliance, tenant protections, and the use of civil penalties. So it's therefore essential that we have a housing enforcement policy updated to reflect this new legislative framework. One word I can never say quickly. The policy provides a clear and proportionate approach to enforcement, supporting a fair and well-regulated private sector that we want to see, giving clarity to responsible landlords and ensuring that those poor standards and unlawful practices can be addressed inconsistently. The proposed policy is based on a nationally developed model, adapted where necessary to reflect our local circumstances, and helps us to ensure consistency and supports the effective implementation of that new legislation, reducing the risk of any legal challenge. You'll see that the report also seeks to approval of the associated fees and charges related to housing enforcement activity. And whilst the government has provided some initial funding to us to support the implementation of the Renters' Right Act, that funding is limited and time bound. So it's quite important, therefore, that we have an up-to-date policy and charging framework in place to support the council to meet its new responsibilities moving forward. And members may note that these fees and charges are being brought forward outside the usual budget setting process for the authority, but this is because the legislation is already being implemented and officers do need the ability to use those new enforcement powers and associated charges without further delay. Finally, members will see a recommendation to delegate authority to the Director of Communities and Houses, Jen, in consultation with myself to make minor amendments as the policy as further government and guidance and changes come forward. And given the elements of the Act are being implemented in phases, this will ensure the policy can remain current and effective. So hopefully I have a seconder, but look forward to any comments and questions.
Any comments, questions, clarifications? Daniel?
Just say I'm happy to second this.
Mark?
Yeah, thanks for this. I think it's a very good policy, and I certainly welcome the policy under the Renters' Rights Act. I think it's long overdue. I don't really have any kind of material questions. I suppose these are questions around, I suppose, capacity and an assessment of kind of workload. I'm assuming we have adequate capacity at the moment. And do we have any indication based on any kind of preliminary assessments within Malvern Hills District as to the kind of number of cases or the caseload that we could expect? And my other question is, given this is a relatively new policy, I'm sure there'll be lots of kind of lessons and practical learnings over the next 12 months. Is there any kind of formal review policy where these lessons and learnings will perhaps be brought forward into the updating of this policy going forward?
Thank you, Chair. Again, they're really good questions, and I'm going to ask officers. We absolutely have had an eye on resource capacity and impact, but I'll pass over to Jen or others if they want to give you a bit more detail about what's happening in the housing area as we move forward. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm happy to pick this one up. Colleagues may want to chip in as well. So the honest answer is we don't yet know what the impact is likely to be, what the volume of queries are likely to be. So we've taken a pragmatic approach to this. So we have expanded our team with one additional property standards officer and one additional technical officer. and they are shared between Malvern Hills and Wychavon. So that expands the capacity within the team. But we are then reviewing and monitoring in order to review the amount of demand that we get. So we've agreed that over the next 6 months, or 6 months from the commencement of the Renters' Rights Act, we will review the workload that has come in order to assess whether or not we need to be making a case through the budget process for any additional capacity. We have received some new burdens funding from government. It will not cover additional capacity. It is very small, and so we are using that for activities such as training, technical equipment, and so on, to help equip us to do the job. I think the other thing to emphasise is that new burdens funding is only for 2 years, and after that the government's expectation is that we will generate an income from enforcement, and that's even more important. That's why it's even more important to have an up-to-date policy in place. To come on to your second question, we'll be reviewing the policy on an annual basis, obviously more frequently if there are major changes nationally, but it will be subject to review on an annual basis. I don't know if Kate or Laura want to add anything.
Can I just thank you for that clarification? I suppose my other question was around, given this is a fairly new policy, lots of renters are perhaps kind of unaware of this as a policy. Will we be working closely, for example, with the Citizens Advice Bureau? I'm assuming there's a kind of educational piece, awareness raising piece that will have to be linked to ensuring that people know about this too.
Yep, we're working with colleagues in the communication team to update our communication strategy and make sure that part of that is raising awareness and working with partners. If there are tenants who contact us where it might be that we don't have responsibility or enforcement powers to deal with a particular issue, we would always signpost people to organisations such as CAB, information from Shelter, etc., to make sure they receive the appropriate advice.
Thank you.
Okay, Natalie, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Just picking up on what Mark said, I completely agree. I think that proactive enforcement is essential to protect the most vulnerable people who might not know their rights or feel unable to complain or not sure how to do that. So we do need to be proactive about getting these messages out there about tenants' rights, and rather than waiting for the complaints to come in. So I'm glad to hear that there's a plan in place for that. So I don't remember seeing tackling damp and mould specifically referenced, although I might have missed it because there was a lot to get through in the papers. But is this something that is tackled in this policy too, please? Thanks.
I'm happy to take that one. Yeah, so it doesn't specifically mention damp and mould as such, but damp and mould is one of the hazards under the Housing Act, and we have powers and duties in that respect to take action against landlords in order to resolve damp and mould hazards.
Okay, because there was the law that was brought in last year, wasn't there? Webb's law, the little boy that died from lung problems because of damp and mould. So I was just a bit surprised not to see it specifically referenced. But I just picking up also on Jen's point that I think the report says that it's the government's modest new burdens funding. It notes that it ends in 2028 with an expectation that enforcement income will be self-sustaining through our fees and charges structure. So obviously we need to introduce those at the same time. But is there genuine confidence that this will realistically cover the full cost of the private sector housing team by that point? I mean, I know we're not going to technically be here, but are we enforcing or introducing a policy that is future fit and unitary authority fit? That's my second question. Thanks.
I think, like Jen said, it's something that we need to keep under review, and the fact that we can have it back here for as long as we're still serving and other authorities taking it forward. I think, you know, we've done some financial modelling with regards to what that might look like, but it's a bit back to the point about, I guess, you know, we'll have to see how it goes. Jen might want to add.
Yeah, I would just clarify that the new burdens funding isn't funding the private sector housing team as it is currently established, including those 2 new members of staff. That is on the establishment, and therefore we wouldn't require that enforcement income to pay for the current investment that we've got. It would be any additional investment. Kate, I don't know whether you want to clarify anything about AWAB's law. And I may get the technicality wrong here, but AWAB's law currently only applies to social housing. It currently doesn't apply to so it's a very specific law which is about the time in which a housing association has to respond to damp and mould. That doesn't mean we don't deal with damp and mould. It's through a different piece of legislation. So just to clarify why that's not referred to in there, it's still important, absolutely essential that we tackle it, but it's dealt with through different legislation, which is covered in the enforcement policy.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. Sorry, apologies if I didn't make that clear previously.
Okay, nothing else. We've go to the vote.
So all those in favour, please raise your cards. That's unanimous.
Right, Community Infrastructure Investment Plan Progress Update, PD 25 to 28. Jenny.
Yep, staying with me, third and final report of the evening. Some of you may be relieved, and then I will pass over to someone else for a report. But our community section have also been very, very busy. So I'm delighted to present this progress update on the Community Infrastructure Investment Plan 25-28. And again, whilst I'm happy to give a quite brief overview, I'm joined by Mark Hammond at the rear, who is knows everything about this legacy programme, and again wish to put on record my note of thanks to both Mark, Amanda and the wider team. And this has been a seismic piece of work, as you can probably see from the level of the detail in the report. So when this council adopted the Community Infrastructure Investment Plan, we made a commitment not simply to maintain community assets, but to invest in them. And this report demonstrates that that commitment translated into real projects, real facilities, and of course real benefits to residents across the whole of Malvern District. Following strong interest from communities, you'll see that 48 projects received conditional grant offers, and of those 45 agreements have now been signed and are progressing. One project being delivered through an alternative funding route, and only one has been withdrawn. And I think, you know, in terms of numbers, that's incredible. And the fact is that we made the commitment that if they weren't successful, that we would work with those projects to support them to make things happen. And it is a significant investment, as you'll see. I think what's particularly pleasing is this investment has been a catalyst unlocking significant match funding for our communities, charitable trusts and other partners. And though a relatively modest council investment, we are delivering projects at a scale that would not otherwise have been possible. And as you know, I've said before, it's reaching communities across the district, which was a particular priority of mine, ensuring that we had an equitable spread, getting to some of those communities that may previously have not received investment in some of those projects they wanted to. Members will note the report is also asking you to approve up to 157,000 of unallocated community infrastructure levy funding to address a funding gap for the Holt Village Hall project. So despite substantial fundraising and match funding secured locally, there is a gap. And in addition, members are also asked to approve the allocation of unallocated SIL reserves to support 2 strategically important projects already identified within the plan, both at the Upton Hill Centre and the development of the new Leysington Community Hub. Both projects are considerably sized projects that will provide benefits through enhanced sports wellbeing and better community facilities. Members may note in the report this funding is already held by the council. It currently remains unallocated, and so the choice really before us is whether to invest these funds now in projects that are ready to proceed to deliver those tangible benefits, or risk losing the opportunity to direct that investment locally as local government reorganises. I just finally want to say it's a powerful example of, I think, where the council has made an absolute difference with leadership and investment. But many of these projects have only been possible because of the extraordinary efforts of those volunteers, community organisations, parish councils, trustees and the likes, who have dedicated countless hours to bring in some of these ambitions to life. And I just obviously wanted to note that. So yeah, I recommend the report to go forward. It is a report to note, but love to hear some of the comments and feedback.
just a point of clarification. I think you said 257,000 of unallocated SIL for Hope Village Hall. It's 157 in the report.
I think I did say 157, but
Well, I may have misheard
I
you.
apologise
I
for
may have
clarity.
misheard you.
And I'm just looking at Mark to double check. It's 157. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Jeremy.
Thanks. The report isn't to note; it's also to approve the SIL funding. So I'm happy to second it. I just wanted to make a couple of comments, particularly in relation to the Upton Hill Centre. This report is to allocate the money. It's not to approve the plans. The plans are going through the planning application at the moment, and I know some people in Upton have raised concerns with some of the elements of the plans. The correct place for those people to raise those concerns is in the planning process, and to put their comments into the planning process. As far as approving the money to enable the Upton Hill and the Lysington and Holt Village to go ahead, I'm more than happy to second this. This is what we set out to do when we took over as leader and deputy leader, to leave a legacy behind once this district council, if the government gets its act together, dissolves. So I'm happy to second this.
Daniel.
It's probably just a point of order, actually. I should have noticed this at the beginning. Sport Martley's obviously on here. I'm a governor at Chantry School, which obviously partners with Sport Martley, so I just thought I'd make that point. Thank you.
Yeah, just to say, I think it's the whole council, all of us as councillors approved the legacy funding, as Jeremy called it. So, and as a champion of asset-based community development and place-based health and wellness, I really do welcome the update, even though I know that things have been in the pipeline for quite a long time and the projects have been running. But I feel a bit excluded from some of the ones happening in my own ward, which is sad to say. So Malvern Vale, for example, I didn't really know anything about that until I read it in the paper, I think. And it's unfortunate that it's going to be closed during the summer holidays for obvious reasons, but I'm assuming there is no way to avoid that. But as Mark certainly knows, and other officers probably, I've pushed for the sports pitches at Malvern Vale to be available for general community use during the school holidays. So a question really, are we anticipating that these enhanced community centres will provide more opportunities for informal community use, as well as the more traditional fetes and other things mentioned in the reports? And just a question about who's going to be operating or managing the Lion Bransford Centre. I'm not sure it says that. Maybe it hasn't been awarded. Maybe it's out to tender yet. But are those plans sustainable post LGR? You know, are we looking at designating it as an asset of community value, or how does that kind of all work once we're not around anymore? So 2 questions, I think there, maybe 3. Sorry, Mark.
Thanks, Nat. Thanks, Chair. I'll kick off and I'll pass over to Mark, particularly on the last question. I'm sorry to hear that you don't feel like you've been involved. I think if I recall, last year, the PDP obviously had sight early doors of a lot of the projects that were coming through, and we did have a really good session as part of a PDP. Apologies if you weren't there, looking at what had been put forward for recommendations, and we tried to involve ward members as much as possible. I think one of my frustrations around is how we do that in terms of the membership for PDP is quite low, the attendance, and as portfolio holder, I am really keen, as I reiterated several times, to collaborate as much as possible with members about things going forward in their ward. So earlier this week, I met with Jen and Amanda and others to talk through the second fund, which kind of comes onto your second question, which will be launched later this year as part of that further programme of funding, which is particularly around supporting the ambition for community hubs for wellbeing, which of course this legacy programme also focused on helping. So I guess to answer your question, do we want to encourage and help facilitate more informal community activity? Absolutely. This was about investing in infrastructure to provide places for communities to do that. But as you'll know, we've got a further programme of investment coming forward that encourages cultural activity, arts, and will be very much more revenue based, to particularly look at how we support volunteering access. We've provided funding to Community Malvern Action Trust. I've probably got the name the wrong way round, and hoping to have them in following their investment to a PDP, so that we can explore with them how that's working. So we absolutely want to boost in an asset based way what communities want to do. and to help them to achieve it. So, you know, more than happy to have a further conversation offline, Nat, around how we can make sure that you and other members feel more involved. But I think it has to be obviously a two-way street, and I can provide opportunities, but sometimes it can be challenging to get the feedback that I'm looking for. I'm going to pass over to Mark, if that's okay, to answer the third question and to maybe add anything he wants to, having overseen this programme from start to finish.
Thank you, Jenny. Yes, I mean, in terms of Malvern Vale particularly, that will grow as a community hub for wellbeing. Freedom Leisure will resource it as such, and therefore there will be a wider access to the facilities, including the pitches, as you mentioned. In terms of Lycentum, we'll be bringing a paper forward in the future around proposals for the operating models. There are various options on the table. As officers, we'll work through those options and come forward with the proposals, obviously subject to approval of the funding tonight and forthcoming planning. That project probably won't be delivered for another 12 months or so in terms of completion. So we do have time to work through the operating approaches and come back with recommendations.
Thank you. Yeah, I was at the PDP, Jen, and I knew about Malvern Vale, but that's the last I heard about it until it was closing for redevelopment. So I just felt that I could have been a bit, you know, better informed. I'm sure John will agree with me that John doesn't come to the PDP, and I'm sure he didn't know about it at all. But yeah, so it's just keeping that communication going, really. So I was certainly aware of the project and of all of the others, but just not after that point until now, is what I'm saying. But thank you, and I'm pleased that there will be some wider community accessibility to some of the pitches and centres going forward.
Anybody else commenting on this? Okay, we have a proposal and a seconder for this item, so let's go to the vote.
To all those voting in favour? That's unanimous.
Thank you, everybody. Next item is David on the adoption of the South Worcestershire air quality.
Etc. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, very interesting. On the 17th of March, we approved that these four SPDs, I call them SPDs, developer contributions, whatever you like to call them, all went out to consultation, which seemed very popular because there were quite a lot of comments came back in from members of the public, other councils, developers, lots of people. So I was quite pleased with that. I don't have any questions on this. I'm quite happy with it as it is. I'm a bit worried that there isn't going to be quite enough money to sort of sustain all the sort of construction and what have you that's going to come forward. But that will be up to the various groups and the developers to sort of do all of that and get that on site. So I'm more than happy to support this, all four of them. And the ones that didn't come to us only went, I think, to Worcester City, if I remember right. I think there was two went to Worcester City only. So, yep, more than happy. And Ian is at the back, who's quite willing to help me out with questions, I hope.
Thank you, David. As I understand it, three of the documents are SPDs and one is a guidance document, I think, reading the report. I suppose my question is in relation to that. So the Sustainable Building and Constructive Guidance was initially proposed as an SPD, but I couldn't quite understand why it is a guidance. I couldn't quite read between the lines as to why that is, particularly given guidance is of more limited weight than an SPD. And as I understand it, in 2018, it was an SPD under the previous SWDPR. So, yeah, just some clarification. I'm just particularly concerned about this one, as this is the heart of our Destination Zero strategy. In fact, one of the key actions or the first action under sustainable homes and buildings is the development of an SPD. I think this is slightly different from the design code. I think Witchhaven has produced a design code, and I believe that is still to be produced by Malvern Hill. So just some clarity around that, given there seems to be a bit of disconnect between what we have in Destination Zero under the second priority and completing an SPD, which in my view is a bit of a let-out clause for developers, given the guidance note is of limited weight. And to be honest, I'm not sure whether that many developers will pay much attention to that.
Thank you very much. It was interesting. I have heard obviously quite a lot about this being taken out as an SPD and what have you, but I'll pass you over to Ian, who has all the information at his fingertips.
Thank you, Councillor. So just to assure you, obviously the main policies are in the South Worcestershire Development Plan review. So but those are obviously now adopted, they're in effect, so developers need to comply with them. So this isn't seeking to water down those policies at all. What we decided was, looking at the document which has been produced, is that it actually just gives guidance in terms of how to interpret those policies practically, whether that's, for example, using code for sustainable buildings, construction, etc. So it's a really helpful document for developers, residents to use in terms of how they apply the policies in the plan. But what it doesn't do in terms of SPD is provide additional planning policy in its own right and how those are developed. So I think the key point is, the plan itself has provided a statutory basis in terms of sustainable construction. We've got strong policies within the plan to that effect. What this note does is help developers interpret how you can actually apply that in practice.
Okay, thanks, Ian. And is the design code, is that still in train as part of this process? I know Witchhaven, I think, has developed their own design code. Is that right?
That's correct. Witchhaven is taking for its own design code for adoption, and that will go this month. But yeah, the intention is to prepare another design code for Malvern. There's no reason why Malvern can't have its own design codes in place. The codes are slightly different because there's provision for those within the MPPF. So they're called design codes for a purpose, and they don't necessarily, they still have the same weight as SPD effectively in how we interpret them.
Thank you.
Natalie?
Yeah, I agree with David. It was really interesting to read the consultation responses, actually, and I know that Pershore Town Council thought that perhaps we weren't being as forceful as we might have been. I think there's the word can in some of the paragraphs, when in my view it should say should, for example, but I know that's just semantics. But I'm going to make a probably quite, I don't know how you describe this, quite a naive point or a naive question. So this paper was written and published before we found out about yesterday's announcement of the government and in their view of our planning processes. So I would say it's overzealous, and I would say that it's a bit shocking. I'm sure you'd agree that it's shocking because we weren't expecting it. So can you, as portfolio holder David or Ian, can you assure us that this document will still carry weight? Is it completely in isolation of the things that they are going to take control of in future? That's a naive question on my part because I just don't know. Yeah, let's just leave it at that for now.
Ian, would you want to come in?
Yeah, definitely. So it's important, even with the designation, that the planning policies that are in effect still have to be applied to planning applications. This is just purely the designation affects the route that an applicant can take as to whether they apply to the council, which they can still seek to do, or whether they apply directly to the planning inspectorate. Regardless of which route they go down, the inspectorate or us will still have regard to the policy framework which is in place in Malvern or Wychavon. So it makes no material difference to the assessment of the planning applications submitted.
That's good to know, I think, although I don't trust them, to be honest with you. Can I ask a question about the affordable housing SPD? Or does anyone else have anything to ask on the other bit first then? Thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering if you think it adequately prioritises social rent. I think that's often regarded as the most genuinely affordable tenure, and we all know that there's no such thing as affordable housing anyway. To be honest with you, is there? Because I think it's regarded as being preferable to shared ownership or to discounted market sale, because they're generally considered to benefit fewer people. So, do you think that we are giving enough weight to the social rent element?
Definitely, yeah, and the plan itself gives more weight to the social rent section as well. So we actually changed the affordable housing policy through the course of the examination to put more weight on social rent, remove the first homes provision which was in there previously. So there's definitely strong emphasis on social rent being provided through the planning process, and this SPD reinforces that.
Brilliant. And then I know it mentions about space standards in the SPD, but not so much about, it mentions solar panels, but not so much about other sustainable energy sources. And I wonder if that's something beyond this policy and would be picked up somewhere else. And things like EV chargers and community growing schemes and all sorts of, growing spaces. They're not really mentioned, but perhaps that's not the place for them. And again, I don't know, so that's why I'm asking.
That's okay. I mean, so that's through building regs. So a lot of things like solar panels are picked up through building regs. So the sustainable guidance now actually references a lot of the guidance around how to comply with building regs, and but that's almost administered through a separate process. But the guidance now helps again with how people can comply with those requirements.
I'd like to ask a question if I can, because I haven't had a response yet. Back early this year, lots of various companies who were building houses were not providing affordable houses and kept saying, oh, they can't afford it, they can't do it, this, that and the other, and what have you. And both Councillor Clark and myself had a meeting with outside consultants to try and see how we could make sure that these developers were providing affordable housing as such that they're supposed to. We haven't had a response back. I assume we're going to get one fairly soon. We were promised one within a month, but we're now nearly 4 months down the line and still haven't had one.
The report, as I understand, has been commissioned. I mean, it's in its final stages, so we will be very shortly, Councillor Harrison. As soon as we've got it, we'll share it with you.
Thank you.
So, David, you're proposing this recommendation to go to council?
Propose these to go to council, or recommend these to go to council, as they are, all four.
And seconder, Jeremy, thank you.
All those in favour, please raise your cards now, please. That's unanimous.
Right, it's getting darker and darker here. Right, financial outturn 25-26. This is for the period that we've just been through, and we're going to have a look at this against the approved budget, and then there's a carry forward into 26-27. The statement of accounts to be approved by the external auditor will be submitted, or is to be submitted by the 31st of January next year. So that's 2027. So that's the deadline for that submission. Looking at the revenue expenditure, table 1, we show the net expenditure budgeted, the actual, and the difference between these in the underspend column. And against the approved budget of 10.7 million, the underspend is 385,000, so it's about 3.6% within the budgeted target. Underspend in this case is due to higher interest rates being sustained throughout the year, and also there are staff vacancies. There's some extra expenditure over and above what we'd anticipated, but overall we've got a 3.6% within our budgeted target. So I'd like to thank the finance team for managing all this and making sure that we come out on the right side. The funding position, this is along with a lift. The business rates income has been boosted, and the general fund is now 7,242,000. 7,242,000. So on the capital expenditure, we spent nearly £5 million in 25-26, and we've got an underspend of 11.8 million against what was projected. So you can see in table 3, it itemises the slippage elements giving rise to the underspend, which there's a large carry forward into 26-27. The capital reserves of 21.8 million are sufficient carry forward for future capital commitments. So we've got to cover those in the future, and that's the full intention. On the cash management side, we've got the end of year cash balance of 30.8 million, which is an increase in the previous year. Investment interest of 1.85 million, which is again, year on year, I keep saying this, is an excellent performance against our budgeted estimate, which was 1.2 million. This was really as a result of the interest rate environment actually holding up longer than expected. There have been up pressures and down pressures in it, but we've actually the up pressures have held it up for longer than we'd anticipated. Table 4 shows a breakdown of the money in the CCLA and Treasury elements, and really overall I would say that we are financially very, very healthy, and a great recommendation for all the staff involved in that from the council I think is warranted here. So thank you for that. I can go over to any comments, questions or whatever on it. Natalie.
Yeah, thanks Andy and team as always for doing such an excellent job. This is about money, so I'm going to ask it now. So when will we be told by government that with the LGR happening and that whole process, when will we be told that we can't spend any more money? Do we know that yet?
So we're waiting for a structural changes order, which will dictate quite a lot of what's going to happen and what needs to happen between now and the new councils coming into being. We expect as part, and it's still to be determined, but we expect as part of that, we'll be told about Section 24 directions, which is what restricts our spending decisions, insofar as anything over a certain level has to be signed off by the Shadow Council. Shadow Councils don't come into place until May 2027, so strictly speaking, we're looking at June 2027 before those restrictions come into play.
That's it. This is an item for noting, so you duly note that, and we'll move on to the next item, which is Hackney Carriage Table of Fares Review, a request for a variation, and that is David, is it?
It's me.
Jeremy.
Yeah, so this is basically, it's probably been about 4 years or so since we did a review to taxi fares, and during that time, it's interesting, I was looking at the report and the petrol and diesel doesn't appear to be much higher. I think we had a higher rate 4 years ago, it dropped back and now it's gone back up again. But certainly over the last 4 years, the cost of living has increased quite dramatically for everyone. So this is a recommendation to enable us to note the formal request for the taxi trade to put an increase through, consider the information presented in the report, and then go through the statutory process for consultation on the preferred agreed option, which is to increase the rates that the taxis are able to charge. It's been put together by Niall, who is here to answer any questions. Get them in quick because he's about to leave the company, as we would say. He's finishing up with Malvern Hills very shortly. So I'd like to take the time to thank him for all that he's done for us in his tenure in this role. But happy to propose this and hopefully answer any questions with Niall's help.
Have we anybody asking on this one?
Yeah, it's a bit tangential, if that's the word. But are we still incentivising EVs for taxi drivers to use? I think we did something around licensing, didn't we, to encourage EV use by the taxi drivers. So that's the first one. But you mentioned cost of living rises, and of course that does affect everybody. And I'm just wondering as well whether any formal impact assessment's been done on the fare increase in terms of some of our residents that really rely on taxis to get out and about, and whether there's a chance that by increasing the minimum charge that's going to reduce people's ability to use taxis as well. So I don't know whether impact assessments are done as part of this kind of exercise, but has one been done if it should have been? And the EV question. Thanks.
I mean, just to answer the second part first, I totally understand the cost of living rises hits everybody, but what you were suggesting is you'd be asking the taxi operators to subsidise the people using the taxis. If this council thinks that we should be subsidising taxis, that's something this council should take a separate decision on, and not ask private sector people to subsidise the taxi drivers.
Sorry, point of order. When did I suggest that that's what I wanted to happen?
You said, have we looked at the cost of the assessment on the users?
Yeah.
So the impact of the price increase on the users.
Yeah, that's not the same as what you just said.
Well, I can't understand how you would say we can't put the prices up without saying the taxi drivers can't.
It was a question about an impact assessment and have we done it, Jeremy? So the answer is a yes, no, really, isn't it? I didn't suggest what you're saying I did.
Okay, fine. So
I'll carry on with that question first, if it's probably best. An impact assessment has been undertaken. Of course, those groups have been identified. You know, they will be affected by any rise, as will everybody else, but probably more negatively affected than people who are working, for example, and sort of unemployed. The difficulty we have is that out of that, there is a public consultation by way of a press notice. So anybody affected does have the opportunity to put forward their concerns, which can be considered by this council before the increase comes into effect. So what we're doing today is looking at the increase, seeing if it's suitable, set at a reasonable level, taking into account the point you've raised about affected passengers, and then going out to our public consultation, which is the statutory notice in the press, to see if anybody comments. Going back to the EV charging, it's not part of this report, but the council did make a declaration to try and support the increase in electric vehicles by offering fee-free license plates. That's still in place. That is continuing, and I'm not sure we've actually put in place a date that it will finish. It was going to be reviewed every 3 years, and it has been reviewed. There hasn't been a massive uptake, and I think that's basically just because of the cost of the vehicles that we're talking about. If people are looking to purchase purpose-built hat carriage vehicles, it's in the region of £80,000. So you know, cost prohibitive, unfortunately. But certainly for any other vehicles, as they become available, we expect to see an increase in the uptake with licence holders.
Can I ask a question about? I mean, there's hybrids, there's plug-in hybrids, there's hybrids with small batteries, and there's full battery vehicles. Is there any differentiation been drawn with regards to the licensing with any of those?
At this stage, we're only offering an incentive or incentivising fully electric vehicles. So we haven't looked at hybrids and all of the other types, because some of them are actually, there's a bit of a red herring because they're not that sort of eco-friendly are they? So it's really just at this stage, it was just the electric vehicles to make it very straightforward. Those are the vehicles that we're encouraging. But yeah, it's like any policy; it will be reviewed and it will be looked at and updated to accommodate those types of vehicles as technology improves and increases every year on year, and the vehicle manufacturers get their new technology in the vehicles which make them greener and cleaner. We'll adapt our policy accordingly.
Okay. Thank you. Approve and sorry, Dean.
Can I probably of any councillor had as much to do with Niall over the years in this room. Always I've been amazed at his outstanding professionalism, his knowledge. We had a training session last year and I must admit we got on his back because we said he wasn't half as good as Niall at training us. I'd like to second what Jeremy said and pass great thanks on to him before he does leave us. I think it's a great shame he is doing so, actually. But that, I certainly echo Jeremy's words. Thank you.
Okay, Jeremy's proposing an increase to the council tax carriage fare tariff. Have we got a seconder for that? Daniel, thanks. So we'll go to the vote.
So all those in favour, can you please raise your cards now?
This is for consultation.
Yeah, it's going
Just
to
to be
go out
clear,
to consultation.
Chairman, there's three elements to this recommendation, including a consultation.
That's unanimous.
All right. Oops. Right, we're going on to Harrowfields Community Infrastructure Levy Project proposal, and David's going to take us on that one.
The best person really to take this forward would be Dean, because it's in his patch and what have you, and he has. Sorry?
I'm just doing a hospital path behind you. It's fine, David.
I can't see. I've only got one set of eyes, unfortunately. If I had two, I wouldn't be here. I'd be on the London Palladium and what have you. But yes, they are short of money, and this is to really bring forward the Community Infrastructure Levy Fund to help promote their building and project. And Dean will take you on.
It's interesting that we bought Harrowfields during lockdown. Not sure on the process was totally followed through, but it was, as far as I understand it, to be a carbon offset project. And since that, it's become a biodiversity project. It has, our officers have engaged local schools and community generally. And as I understand it, this money is to enable that engagement to carry on and to help build that biodiversity. And that's, I think, about as much as I've got on it. Ian's nodding well, so I can't have said too much wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to second this. I mean, so the original purchase of the land was on effectively on carbon offsetting, and to put a sort of a stake in the ground for the council to be able to do something with it. And there's been a lot being done in terms of improving the environment. The land has been very poor quality. It's on the floodplain, etc., etc. One of the things, though, is that this is effectively publicly owned land. It is effectively a nature reserve. And the public should have the ability to go in and look and use the nature reserve. My comment was we've never actually called it anything particularly, so we're starting to call it Harrowfields. And a lot of the money is to improving access and the safety for the public to go on and use the land. So if you see in 1.4, it's about signage to tell people what the land is there, that it's MHDC owned land, that it's available for them. It's to make better gates, it's to put in footbridges, to enable people to use that land more effectively. So I think this is a very good value for money to use some SIL money to create a very large nature reserve that's being maintained by the council in the short and medium term, and encouraging people to go in and use it. So I'm absolutely happy to second this.
Yeah, just to add to that before we get too dark in here as well. Obviously, this piece of land is next to where I represent in Lower Broadheath, and it is, and close to where I work as well. It's a great piece of land. I think in terms of people's local knowledge of it, though, that's probably where it's been lacking a little bit. So I think some of this is around things like signage as well, and being able to make sure that people are aware of this land and what they can use it for. And I think that's a key part, having had the land now for quite a number of years, and obviously having, you know, made it more usable over that time and working with the RSPB as well. I think it's now kind of time to open it up a little bit more and allow public access to it, and have sort of more accessibility around it, because I think there's great opportunities with it. And actually talking about legacy and things that we can do as a council, I think this is a great kind of legacy for us as a district council in an area that's outside the centre of Malvern as well, which I think is also important. Thank you.
Natalie got in before you.
Who? What? Me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with any of that. A few of us went and had a visit around and had a lovely walk around and saw some and heard some bird species and butterflies and all sorts of things that I didn't know were there. And I know that there was an ambition to bring curlews back there as well. I'm not sure if that actually happened, but as an endangered red list species, it would be great to get some curlews back there. So I've got a suggestion in naming the site. Can we ask local people and maybe local school children to be involved in naming the site, because they will call it what they call it. We could call it what we want, but I'm sure there's a local nickname for what it's referred to, probably by the kids or the families around and about. So rather than us naming it, I think that might be better, and it would it would encourage some community ownership of the area as well, and hopefully that it's looked after and respected as we fail to exist. Which brings me on to my second point, really, and I totally agree with allocating the funding for now, but when we're relying on volunteer labour to kind of keep this maintained, really, as a site, what happens when we're not here anymore, and who takes that on? And I'm just a bit worried about it becoming into a state of disrepair. We haven't invested much in the last 6 years by the looks of it, so who's going to take that on once we get it back up to scratch? Thank you.
We got. Sorry, hold on a minute. So the first thing is naming the site by local children and the residents in the area. I think that's an excellent idea. So can we actually incorporate that into going forward with this?
Getting a couple of nods from the back, Chairman, so I think we can proceed on that basis.
So we're happy to do that. Right. On the relying on volunteer and that ebbing away after a period of time, is there any, what's the fallback on that to sustain this? Ian, yeah.
Hi, John, hiding at the back here. I think there's a couple of important things. One is, although this is the first time I think we've ever come for a formal budget for Hallow, I think we need to pay credit to Lorna and Al Pounder before that for all the work they were doing, begging, borrowing, but never stealing resources to get the site into the condition that it is now. So, it'd be wrong to think that nothing's happened since we've acquired it. An awful lot of work has happened, and down to the volunteers and others. I think it's probably best to leave it to Lorna to think how we utilise the volunteers that we've currently got, and maybe they'll be re-energised by the fact that we're also offering investment to bring the site to another level around interpretation boards and other opportunities. So I think it's a real strength that we're now backing it with resources to take it on to another level.
Mark, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thanks for that. Obviously very supportive of this. I suppose my question is, I know your team, Ian, were looking at various government funding, and I think you did, it was under countryside stewardship. I know DEFRA in the last couple of months have just launched this new environmental farming initiative. And I think the last few weeks, they've announced a new grant funding window is about to open in a couple of months for small scale pieces of land, which just like this, which includes capital projects such as fencing, interpretation, and actually, I think placing a big emphasis on public access. So I suppose my question is, are we maximising the opportunities for those new funding opportunities alongside whatever we provide as a council?
We certainly will be, and as you point out, Mark, I think it was the high level stewardship scheme has contributed not a huge amount of money, because there's never a huge amount of money in those schemes, but it certainly helped a lot of the work that the volunteers and others have done. And be assured we'll exhaust every funding opportunity we can to match what I hope we agree to tonight.
Thank you.
Oops. Is that it? We've got, David, I take it you're proposing.
Yes, that's no problems at all, Mr. Chairman.
Jeremy's seconded it.
So all those for approving the allocation, please raise your card now. That's unanimous.
Right, we're on to the final item, which is the annual performance report for 25-26. And I think to start off to say to the whole of the council that they have done a really, really excellent job in improving year on year and getting to the point where we are at the moment, where every bit of performance is improved as you go through that documentation. So in the first instance, we've got the SWDPR has been adopted March 26 this year, and there's been a revised NPPF which was published, which resulted in a significant increase in housing numbers. So that's come along. I'm not sure it's come in sideways because it's come in straight and hit us in the face. So what that means is the South Worcestershire councils there's an immediate review of the plan to meet these new housing numbers. And new regulations require a faster timeline for plan making. So the South Worcestershire Council therefore must begin a 30-month local plan making process by the 31st of October this year. So that's a new environment, or a changed environment, which we have to respond to. On the services, I think it's been particularly noticeable on the improvements that we've had. And the highlights are positive. There's no reds. We've got in the RGB red, green and amber, or red, amber and green, traffic light indicators for the different levels of performance. So I'd like to say, first of all, in terms of the planning team, how noticeable it is that they've actually got to grips with the things that have been year on year holding us back. And I would like to thank Ian MacLeod, who's come in as the director of that, in transforming the planning team in such a way that they've lifted the level of performance up. There is only one amber. Having said that, everything else is green, and that's on the validations, but it's noticeable that the figures there have also improved. So it's not as if it's stagnant, it's as if, I think there was a review earlier this year, which was actually said, how do we go about improving? And I think that's actually come through. So thanks to Ian and thanks to the team for that, and it's something I think we're all proud of. Staff sickness, which was something that comes up year after year. I think everybody's been worried about our staff. We do actually care very seriously that staff are happy, well contented, well rewarded and appreciated. And their health and well-being is very, very important to us. And we've now actually reduced the staff sickness, which is an indication of to some extent of the well-being, because these sort of things will affect your general health. So that is a great result. So looking forward to going forward and keeping that level of performance up in the year ahead. I would say that the planning application times validation approved, as we said, and I suppose going forward into the next this year, we'll be looking for maybe to get that amber into green, so that it's actually green right across the board. That would be actually really good. I won't say much about the council plan because everything is on track there. It's all there for you to go through. But again, it's the performance of the whole council and every member of this council who are actually bought into delivering for residents, and the whole council gets the thanks of the administration for all their efforts on that. So I will open that up to comments, observations and otherwise.
Firstly, just to double down on what you said about planning, I think just obviously from experience as a councillor, you can see things moving a lot quicker, and communications is probably better than it's ever been in terms of communication with planning officers as well. So I think that's been great, and I think just generally, from a committee point of view as well, I think we've been very strong in terms of planning authority. Just on the welfare of staff and the staff sickness element of things, just thinking about local government reorganisation, what are we doing in terms of staff who might be worried or uncertain about the future? Obviously, with things changing in the not too distant future, are there plans or are there actions being taken with regards to that at the moment?
So we have regular staff briefings with all staff where LGR obviously is one of the topics that we talk about. We've got lots of information on our internal website. We call it Connect. So there's frequently asked questions around LGR in terms of, as far as we can answer those questions, in terms of increasingly what's going to happen to me during LGR. We also have an employee assistance scheme, and we have managers and HR that are there to chat things through with people. I think ahead of a decision is quite difficult. I think generally speaking, I can say this, that staff generally would be happier with a north-south solution rather than a single county-wide solution. And what we're keen to do when we talk to staff, and SMT colleagues are saying, we talk about local reorganisation is change, but for a lot of people it's an opportunity. Bigger organisations have more opportunities for promotion and working in areas that you prefer to work in. So we're increasingly saying, think of this as an opportunity, certainly for lots of members of staff. This will be a real opportunity, and get involved, volunteer and get involved in the process. It's a long and busy process between now and the 1st of April 2028, so get involved and take the opportunities when they come. We're not seeing lots of staff leave. Equally, we're not seeing lots of staff really worried about this at the moment. That might change as we get closer to 1st of April 28. But at the moment, I think we've got the balance about right. I don't know if any of my colleagues from SMT want to comment on this point, but I think we're in a good place, really, in terms of staff, talking to staff and keeping staff reassured and happy and informed, really. And we're honest at every step. And that's the key, very important to us, is absolutely honest, and we share what we can when we can.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking. So as usual, there's a lot to be proud of in this report, and we have got fantastic officers who get on with their jobs, basically, despite what's going on around them. So I would like to thank them myself too. Picking up on John's point about planning performance, I mean, it's obvious that there have been some significant improvements, and it's just a shame that government don't seem to have picked up on that particular issue. So I will take the opportunity to say that. And also just to highlight a couple of points in addition to those that John's already mentioned, with cases of domestic violence or reported domestic violence continuing to increase nationwide. I was really pleased to see about the continued focus on providing adequate and timely support. So the steps to take to open the Safe House, for example, which again, I don't think I knew about that. So I was really pleased to read about that. And really good to see that the attendance at the Cut It Out sessions is still high, because I funded 3 of those in my county division this year, and so I'm pleased about that. Also, that there's an updated temporary accommodation procedure that's been introduced. I'm not sure what that is and where I could find it, but I would like to know more about that, if that's okay. Empty homes, though, that still feels a bit like an abstract concept to me, if I'm honest with you. And the paper says that the new Empty Homes Grant Initiative scheme has been developed and it'll be introduced. It says early 2026-27, but obviously that's 2 very different things. So I don't know when that is going to be introduced. Does it mean late 2026, early 2027? But yeah, so I'd like to know when that's coming in. Also, when will we know the rollout of the food waste collection programme? Because I'm keen to promote that to my residents. We do regular newsletters, and it'll be really nice to put something in there to make sure that take-up's good. And to end on a lighter note, do we know how many house martins have moved into their Desres on Malvern Vale? Thank you.
Right. House martins, I think, might be quite a difficult question, unless somebody's standing counting them. But Jeremy, you wanted to come in.
Just on the household waste, so we did put some communication out saying that the household waste would start on a rollout basis, area by area, from October this year. So that will impact this numbers, and that's what I was going to pick up on. Was I'm always looking at the recycling percentage, and the household waste should have a big impact on how much of our waste is being composted, which reduces the amount that goes to the incinerator. So we did do some promotion saying we didn't want everyone to contact us now, because it's going to be a staged rollout from October onwards, but we think we'll have everyone out by the end of this fiscal 26-27.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm just interested in knowing where's first, really, and then where's next, and where's after that, just so that we can help you get it out there.
Can I answer it by avoiding it? We've got a clear comm strategy about when we're going to release which areas we're going into, and I wouldn't want to set heads running by announcing it publicly here, but I will, of course, we can have a conversation, and I'll update any member who wishes to know.
We get what are we going to do? Empty homes?
Thank you. I think it's always the double Gen Act, and we're quite sure who's going to answer. I think there was 2 questions or requests within that, so forgive me, Nat, if there was more. The first was around clarity of the 26-27 in terms of the financial assistance for the empty homes. That's financial year 26-27, so might not have been very clear, but that obviously was subject to a more in-depth report that came through council in terms of the work of the empty homes officer. I think the other point was about quite liking to see and read the policy around temporary accommodation. I'm sure Jen can take away an action to send that through to you. Welcome any questions and comments off the back of that. Was that all of your points? And again, to thank you for your positive feedback about some of the work around domestic abuse and housing. We are very incredibly lucky here to have such a high performing, good, great team of people doing some great work, which I know that you and I have both had the privilege to work with. So again, always think it's a great opportunity to put on thanks our record to officers.
Yep, thanks. I'm happy to just add to that. Just to confirm, we're expecting the grant incentive scheme to go live any day. So we do intend to share some comms around that, and we'll make sure that members receive that comms first, so that you can share that within your communities as well. We did share a quarterly report by our empty homes officer David with through Vic's Roundup, and it might be worth us sharing that again to members, because it's got a lot of really rich information, including case studies, but also numbers of interventions he's made and the success he's achieving. The last bit about temporary accommodation. just to say, I'm just rereading that we talked about updated procedures. So that's not a written down policy. So there's nothing to share with you, but I can clarify that what we mean by that is that we're trying to reduce the number of families with children going into B&B in the first place. So rather than just focusing on getting them out quickly, how do we make sure they're not in there in the first place? So part of that new procedure involves senior manager sign off of any B&B placement that involves children, and a regular review by a senior manager of their personalised housing plan, so that actually all avenues are being explored for that family. So we're sort of it's strengthened procedures, if you like, rather than a new policy.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Thank you, because it's been a concern of mine for quite a long time. I know Jen shares it, and I know Jen shares it too, around children and families in temporary accommodation. So that's really good to know. Thank you.
Jen, just point of clarification, has there been an update to the empty homes information that we had recently, or is it, were you talking about sharing the same report again, or what?
Yeah, so David's producing that report. Our officers producing report on a quarterly basis. So I can't quite remember which quarter you had, but we'll make sure that each quarter is shared with you as it comes out.
First one's noting.
To note the report informing members of the council performance at the end of the year and the strategic issues and risks facing the council. What else is there?
And to
thank staff is one of them.
Thank staff and consider the points raised in
Section 4.
Section 4 of the report.
Okay, I haven't got it here, but
Okay.
okay. The achievements, improvements and performance be noted. The strategic issues raised in section 4 be considered, and the executive committee thanks staff for the outcome of their efforts. So I shall propose that. We got seconder, Jeremy, and we vote on that.
All those in favour? That's unanimous.
Okay, and that concludes the executive today.